Ready to go? You ready to go, Debora?
Sure.
All right. So, let me get my notes out. All right. So 3, 2, 1. Debora, I want to thank you for allowing us to get this exclusive interview with you today. And we are here with the author of All Things New. How are you today, Debora?
I'm great, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So we're going to get right into it. I mean, people want to hear from you. I'm excited to learn and, just hear some new experiences for myself today and for the people that's listening and going to be watching. So we're going to get right into it. So where were you raised, Debora?
I was raised in St. Louis in the Midwest. I was the oldest of 4 children in my family.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how long were you there? I mean, did you go to school outside of there, or?
Actually, I lived in Missouri for the first 24 years of my life. Grew up in St. Louis, as I said, and then when I went off to college, it was in southern Missouri. But after the age of 24, I eventually left Missouri and never went back.
Wow. So that's considered the Midwest, right?
Yes, definitely. Okay. The gateway to the West.
So you don't miss being in the Midwest at all?
No, not really.
Okay. So what do you believe, because a lot of people don't know really like your lifestyle and some of your background. What would you say some of the, that people need to know how you were raised that possibly influenced anything that you became as a person, as a young adult?
Well, like I said, I was the oldest of 4 children. I was very mature for my age. I was really shy as a little girl, very shy, I might say. Had very few friends. Kind of a loner. But I grew up in the church. Always went to church on Sundays, and I had this concept of who God was at that time, which has pretty much drastically changed since then because of some things that I've gone through in my life.
So, was both of your parents in the home, or?
Yes, yeah, both my parents were there, and even when I can't remember exactly how old I was, but we began to take on foster children, and so we had foster kids in our home. We would get infants, generally raised 1 or 2 infants at a time, even as I was growing up. So we had a lot of babies in the house. Wow.
So, as you were growing up, what are some of the things that you believe that, a lot of people don't really know that you had, you were into homosexuality?
Yeah.
And what do you think that some of the things that you believe that led you to that lifestyle?
Well, when I was a teenager, around the age of 15 or 16, I experienced a very devastating and deep betrayal. And when I experienced that, I didn't know really how to process what was happening or what I perceived as happening to me. And I ended up rejecting that God even existed, because I felt like if God was really who I thought he was, that this couldn't have possibly happened to me. It was, around the age of 15, 16, like I said, and I began really experiencing deep depression, suicidal thoughts. Was drinking a lot, hard alcohol, and taking drugs, and just really trying to destroy my life to mask the pain that I had experienced. And I believe that this was truly the triggering mechanism for me entering into a life of homosexuality, which didn't really happen until several years later. But what happened was my parents ended up getting divorced, and my father moved across the country with my younger brothers and sister, and I went off to college. When I graduated high school, went to college in southern Missouri, and as a result of my experiencing this depression and this kind of state that I was in, I was vulnerable to attack, and I was sexually assaulted by men in college and experienced further hurt. Once I graduated college, I went to the Army. And in the Army, I met a woman there who introduced me to homosexuality. So that's how it started. I was 24 at the age of actually entering into the lesbian lifestyle.
So did you have any like second thoughts of what am I doing, and what is this or was it more of a curiosity, or you just felt at the time that this was something that you want to kind of indulge in and try?
Honestly, at the time when I was first approached by this woman, I felt like in the core of my being that this was wrong. I was repulsed by the idea of it, but at the same time, I was desperate for love.
And that wasn't anything, not to cut you off, I want maybe the viewers to understand that this is something that you wasn't raised seeing.
No, I wasn't raised seeing. I didn't even know what it was.
Okay.
And when she approached me, like I said, I felt this revulsion kind of on the inside. I thought, ooh, this is wrong. But at the same time, I was desperate for love. And so I was able to push down those feelings and began to talk to myself, essentially in my head, and started kind of going back over my life. And over time, I convinced myself that I was born gay and that is why I was so different as a child. That's why I didn't connect well with young men. And I didn't want anything to do with men at this point. And so I really talked myself into this lifestyle of homosexuality. And again, I had fallen deeply in love with this woman. And so I was in a relationship with her for about 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in that time period, 5, 6 years, were there any men involved or any?
Well, honestly, at first, to convince myself that I wasn't gay, I became promiscuous with men.
Okay.
At first, in that, and got myself in a whole bunch of situations that were not good. But eventually, again, I convinced myself that I was gay and fully embraced this life.
Was there any like narcotics, any drugs or anything?
Not really at that time. I was in the Army, so I wasn't, and I was a pilot, so I was very careful to keep my, health good and not get caught drinking or doing anything like that because I didn't want to lose my status as a helicopter pilot in the Army. And I was actually, the two of us went to Germany and we were stationed together there. So kind of away from my friends and family here in the US, and just really fully embraced that lifestyle, but at the same time did it deeply in the closet, because in the late 80s it was not permissible to be gay and in the military because you would get kicked out. So we had to be very secretive about our relationship.
Now, how did your family embrace that lifestyle? Did they really fully know that you?
Honestly, I wasn't connected to my family hardly at all at that point. Because of the hurt that had happened and the breakup of the family, I wasn't very close to any of them. Maybe on Christmas, once or on birthdays, we would make a phone call, and that was about the extent of our family time. So they weren't really involved in my life at that time. It was several years later when that first relationship broke up, and I ended up in a second, what I would consider a serious relationship, that I really wanted to let my family know who I am. This is who I am. I actually created a video, which is interesting because it's fun to watch it now. It was in 1994. I sat down on the sofa and made this video to let my parents know that I was gay. And I mailed it to them. My mom was in one place, my dad and the rest of my family were in another place.
Yeah,
VHS. Yeah, for those of you who don't know what that is, right. It's the little tape. So yeah, VHS tape. And actually it's funny because I have it posted on my website now. You can actually go see it. I show you the video then and then, which I'll tell you in a little bit more about what happened later. But yeah, so I wanted them to know who I was. Basically saying, I'm happy, this is who I am, and I introduced my parents to my girlfriend at that time.
And this was the new partner that you had?
This was the second.
The second.
Yeah, the second partner.
So when you did that, did your family have any idea of the first person, or no, not at all?
I'm not real sure. I honestly don't even know.
So this was the opening up
of saying this is who I am, and really admitting and kind of living more out than I was able to initially, because I was no longer in the Army by this time. And so I was more free with my homosexuality and began to fully embrace it, going to the gay bars and just really living out as a lesbian.
So at this point, because you said that you were raised in the church now at this point. So at this point, when you fully embraced it, how did you psychologically feel? Did you completely feel like you didn't want to hear anything about any spirituality, any religion? You just completely said, hey, this is who I am, and this is, people just got to accept me from this point on. Was that kind of the feeling that you were going through at that time?
So here's the funny part of the story. At the time, I was a full atheist. I did not believe that there even was a God. And when I went to college, I got a degree in geology, and everything I was taught, I had fully convinced myself that, there was no God. And so I'm in this second relationship with Cameron, the gal that I pull into the video screen. And one day she says to me, Deb, I want you to go to church with me. And this was early in our dating life. And I told her, I said, well, I don't even believe in God, and I haven't been to church. I think at that point it was about 16 years that I hadn't even been in a church. But you know how it is when you're dating someone and they want you to do something. She looked me right in the eye and she said, Deb, Jesus wants you back. And I was shocked by that statement because in my spirit I could feel something moving. It felt like something was stirring, like a yearning for something that I didn't recognize what it was. Because I had built these stone walls around my heart because of the hurt that I had experienced. And so when she said that, something began to move, and I thought, I'll give this a try. So I went to church with her, and this was in Florida, and it ended up being a gay church. It was a church with all the people there were gay. And so I started to go to church and be involved in the gay community. And that is how God started drawing me back to himself, which was interesting to me now. But so Cameron and I were together about 5-6 years, and that relationship ended up being very dysfunctional as kind of my first one. And I ended up leaving Florida and moving to the Washington, D.C. area. And at the time, my relationship with Cameron was terrible. She was seeing someone else, and we were just really not doing well. So I was glad to move away from Florida. It wasn't that caused me to move, it was actually my job. So I moved to the Washington, D.C. area, immediately contacted the gay realtors, tried to figure out where do the gay people live. And I couldn't afford to live actually in DC or nearby because it was so expensive here that I ended up moving to West Virginia. And I was commuting on the commuter train back and forth. But there I met my next serious relationship. Her name is Barb. And the two of us met in April of 2000. And it was 1 year later after we met that we actually went and got married. We went, it wasn't officially marriage at the time because that wasn't legal yet, but it was a civil union. We traveled actually from West Virginia to Vermont and got legally bound to one another in a civil union. We sold all of our properties, combined all of our resources, and bought some land just outside of Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Beautiful place. And we built our dream home.
And you said Barb was from West Virginia?
Yeah, she was from West Virginia. That's where I met her. And so we settled down in the community there and began to, get fully into the local lesbian population. And then God started pulling on my heart again. And I had this desire to go to church, which I couldn't deny, and I couldn't get away from it. So we started looking for a church to attend. And that's when we found Covenant Baptist Church in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. And at the time, I didn't know it was a Baptist church the first time we went in there, because if I had seen that sign, I probably would have not chosen to go to that church. Because by this time, I had been fully taught by the gay community that mainstream Christians would never accept me as a lesbian. And so I had in my mind that I would have never crossed the threshold of a Baptist church. But the funny thing is, God had me go in the other side that didn't have the sign. And we went to church. The people loved and embraced us, and Barb and I actually got to a point where we wanted to join the church as a couple. And they said, no, you can't join as a couple because we don't believe that the life that you're living is in congruence with God's will. They said you can join separately, you're welcome to keep coming, we want you to keep coming to church. So we kind of worked through some issues with them. Barb and I got involved in a women's Bible study group. Every Sunday night we would attend this Bible study.
So what was Barb's
her background
with that? I'm pretty sure people are curious. Like, what was she taught in raised in the church as well? Or
she attended church as a young girl, and I think she went to Catholic school as like elementary school, but she was not a church attender at the time that she and I met. She hadn't been regularly attending any church, and so the two of us went to this church together. And it was there that we both came to the realization that Jesus died for our sins, and we surrendered our hearts to him. And over time, we spent time with this women's group. And again, these women in this group just loved us right where we were and began to give us that deep spiritual friendship that we needed. They didn't condemn us for the way we were living our life, although they knew that we were lesbians, but they never talked about it. They just loved us, and they taught us to read the Bible. They taught us how to pray, how to praise God. And it was through this process of those women just really being there for us, and us, Barb and I, beginning to read the Bible for ourselves, that we came to the realization that we were wrong, that this was not God's will for our life. And we both decided to walk away from homosexuality. So that formal announcement that we made to the women's group was on January 1st, 2006, and I haven't looked back since.
Wow. That's really interesting, because I really want to know, and I'm pretty sure the viewers that's going to watch this is going to also want to know, do you find that, so through that experience, I'm hearing that it was 3 relationships, right? Was it 3?
3 relatively serious
relationships. Long term, yeah. Yes, 3. Yeah. Okay. Do you find that in those 3 relationships, is it relatively the same, you believe, as far as their experiences juxtaposed to yours?
I think everybody's experiences are different. Some people come to believe that they were born gay because even as a small child, they've never felt anything different. For me, it was something that I embraced later in life. So I think each person has an entirely different experience. But I do believe that there's something wrong that happens in life for a person to embrace something that goes against God's will and goes against what the Bible teaches. God designed humanity to be men and women, and for any intimate relationships to be one man and one woman, only in the confines of marriage. So anything outside of that, it's like something has happened along the way. For me, it was betrayal and abuse. There's different things that cause people to embrace homosexuality. So every person's different. You can't really categorize everybody the same.
Now, once you made that turn in 2006, how would you say your life changed?